Welcome everyone to Courageous Parenting, transforming challenges into opportunities. I'm Edith Wolek. I'm a transformational leadership coach and mother of three beautiful children and Amazon bestselling book author. And I have a great pleasure welcome our amazing speaker, Jared Skowron, and he will talk to us about fantastic topic about natural supplements that can support your child with all different aspects of your neurodivergencies, I suppose, and all different immune system support. So let's hop in. So our vision here is that we are committed to empowering parents and children by building connection with love.
Hello, everyone. I am Filza Jabin, mother of three beautiful children, transformational teen and parents leadership coach. Today we have here with us Dr. Jared Skowron. Welcome, Dr. Jared.
Thank you very much, ladies. I'm really excited to be part of this Courageous Parenting Summit and anything we can do to help families who have kids with autism. I'm really happy to be here, so thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Jared Skowron is an international autism biomedical doctor that has over 20 years of experience helping children with autism recover, founder of the global autism supplement company Spectrum Awakening. Dr. Skowron has dedicated his life to helping children with autism. And today he is going to talk about with natural supplements can help your autistic child. So tell us more about this, Dr. Jared.
Well, yeah, I would love to. Let me kind of just start with an overview, kind of what I've done with my work over the years. So, I got out of med school, and this was back at the turn of the century, and we were never taught about autism in med school, and because it was rarer back then, 25 years ago when I started school, and when my first year of practice, and I work in pediatrics, my first year of practice, this girl was brought into my office, and she was probably a teenager, and she was in a wheelchair, and she was extremely severely autistic, and she had no language, and she made no eye contact, and I felt like she didn't know the difference between me and the wall. So I knew nothing back then, but I did know that there were certain nutrients that the brain uses to improve. And again, this is going back 21 years ago when these kind of natural things, at least here in the U.S. where I'm based, were all very snake oil and woo woo, and going back 2 decades, it hadn't gained its kind of social acceptance as it has now. And so I gave this girl fish oil, I gave this girl B vitamins, I gave her magnesium, very simple things. And in 1 month, she started making eye contact with me. And this another month after that, she went from nonverbal to having some words. And then a month after that, she got back into school. She had been just at home because she really wasn't doing anything. She'd been at home for years. So I figured if in 3 months I could help a girl get back into school and get onto the road to recovery and improve her when I knew nothing, imagine what I could do if I knew something. And now, 21 years, I've worked with thousands of families and thousands of kids, and it's great because there's so much we can do to help them.
That's so wonderful.
Fascinating. So usually when families are coming to see you, what they are looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say the biggest things that families are looking for, and again, I'm a father to a 12-year-old girl who's neurotypical. Families are looking to just help their kids be kids. And I would say the three major things that most families are looking for. Number one, they want more language. So many of our kids are nonverbal, or they just repeat what we say, or they might script things they see on TV or on YouTube. But there's not enough conversation. There's not enough back and forth, and parents really don't know what their kids are feeling. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they in pain? Are they scared? We don't know. And so I would say language is one of the top three things. The second one would be better behaviors. And our kids on the spectrum, some of them are super hyper and they're jumping on your furniture. Other ones are always toe walking across the room. And then other ones get really violent, and they're angry and they may hurt themselves, they may hurt you, you may have your hair ripped out, you may have scratches on your arms. Different levels of behavior that just don't work for any of us. That's the second big thing. And I think the third big thing, which is just parenting in general, we want our kids to grow up, be independent, get a job, get married, be happy, because one day we won't be here. We won't be able to help them. So I would say those are the three biggest things our families are looking for.
Thank you. Interesting.
As you mentioned about the hyperactivity, I have seen parents getting most confused between having autism or ADHD. Can you tell us something about that? What are the similarities and differences in ruling out both the neurodivergency?
Right. So I would first say this. I think when we look at those diagnostic terms, like, hey, my child has autism, my child has ADHD, they're very subjective. When in medicine, when we look at different medical conditions, some things we can diagnose objectively. We can do a blood test and say you have high cholesterol. There's no doubt, here it is. Then there's other diagnoses that are more subjective. There's no real lab testing or an X-ray or anything we can do to confirm things. So we just kind of hear what you say as parents. We look at the child and we take an educated medical guess for a diagnosis. So when you have somebody with autism, there's going to be multiple delays in development. And so when I say delays in development, we have averages of what kids should be doing at different ages. At 1 year old, they should be doing this, and at 2, this, and at 4, and at 6, and 9, that. So we look at development of language, we look at development of kind of mental processing or, academic education. We look at sensory function, we look at motor skill, we look at social interactions. So those are kind of the things that might not be age appropriate that are going to be kind of lumped into a diagnosis of autism. Now, when we look at ADD and ADHD, again, it's a very subjective diagnosis. It's basically, is your child hyper, or can your child focus and attend on a task for enough period of time for their age? And so you kind of see the similarities because that lack of focus and that hyperactivity are such huge components of autism. So I hear pediatricians say, oh, your child has autism and ADHD, or just autism, or just ADHD. But for me, there's so much overlap. There's so much overlap because autism has so many different symptoms. So if I hear from a family say, oh, my child has autism and ADHD, for me, they're one and the same because you're going to have lack of attention in kids with autism. So you can have that inability to focus, you can have that hyperactivity as symptoms of autism, but it can also get diagnosed separately. But again, for me, when I'm working with patients, it's really the same thing. It's a brain that's not working as it should. And so my goal is to make that brain work better so we have better language and we don't have hyperactivity, we have better focus and all those other things. So regardless of where we put it diagnostically, it's all about helping this child's brain work better.
Mm. You have mentioned before supplementation, and this is a huge dilemma. This was a huge dilemma for myself 2-3 years ago when I was faced with that question. What do I do to support my young adult son, whether to choose pharmaceuticals or supplementation? So can you tell us why you would choose supplementation versus pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I would love to. I would say that, let me give you a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is because they work better, period. I mean, if you want your child to speak more and behave better and have better sensory function and motor function or other kind of health issues that are often common with our kids, whether it be gut issues or candida or parasites or mitochondrial issues, the response to supplements is just better than pharmaceuticals. So now I've prescribed pharmaceuticals for my kids. I prefer the natural stuff for our kids with autism. It's well, what we want to look at is what is the effect of these things? You know, you want something better, you try something, what's the effect? There are no pharmaceuticals that improve developmental delays. Period. There's no pharmaceuticals that help with the child's language. There's no pharmaceuticals that are going to help with motor function. They just don't exist. And if they did, I'd use them. Okay? The supplements are just the supplements provide the nutrition that the child is lacking to have the body work as it should. You know, obviously our society here in the 21st century is so pro pharmaceuticals. We think that that's the answer for everything, but for our kids with autism, there are other answers. And I feel like medicine has kind of ignored everything else and said, we're going to put all that stuff away and just use this. When, in my opinion, it's better to use everything. Let's use as much as we can for our kids. So when it does come to pharmaceuticals, there isn't, like I said, I just want to repeat myself, there's nothing that will improve developmental delays pharmaceutically. There are pharmaceuticals that will help behaviors, and there are pharmaceuticals that will help our kids get rid of different infections that they commonly have. So a lot of many of our kids with autism, if not most, have infections that are very chronic, usually in their gut, like candida or parasites or things. So pharmaceuticals can help with that. Or you can, take different psych meds for behaviors, but nothing's going to create permanent change. So again, back to the short answer, it works. For 2 decades, I've given supplements and got better language, better behavior, and better sensory function and motor function and gut health. So why not use what works?
Can you tell us something, which supplement can help our autistic children improve their language or speech delay?
Yeah, so that's a great one. This is one of the first things I start with my families. Um, and again, just kind of to go back and share my story and history. Um, Again, I've been in practice helping kids with autism for 20 years, and my first 10 years of practice, we were using different vitamins, we were using different nutrisupplements and nutraceuticals, and they were working great. But you need certain ones and certain combinations and certain dosages. So a lot of my families kind of felt overwhelmed. They felt like they were pharmacists. They had all these bottles at home and trying to mix everything every morning, and it was a lot. So 10 years ago, I created my own vitamins for my patients. And I said, look, this is what I want our kids to have. This is what's working in my practice. I'm going to make my own stuff, my own vitamins and supplements that I know are high quality, and I want them that way for my patients. We make them gluten-free, we make them dairy-free, we make them as powders because most of our kids don't swallow pills. We try to make them as palatable as possible because they're picky eaters. So we started formulating our own 10 years ago, and now we've grown to like having 75 different supplements for our kids. So when it comes to which ones are going to work best for language, I would say the two things you must try with your kids. Number one, and most importantly, and I say this because it has the most scientific research. I mean, there's so many different research studies on this vitamin helping language, is a vitamin called folinic acid. And folinic acid is a special form of folic acid or a special form of folate. And that's a very common vitamin in multis and prenatals and in our food. But it's this special form of that seems to get into the brain and help their language. So, folinic acid, if you have not heard of it or you've not tried it with your kids, it's the number one to go to for language. The second thing I would say that's really important is a certain protein. Now, there's a protein or an amino acid, which is called 5-HTP. And 5-HTP is the protein that gets into the brain and makes more serotonin. Now, we often think of serotonin as making us happy and relaxed and calm, and that's what a lot of different antidepressants do. They help with your serotonin levels. But if we can increase that serotonin in the brain, which we can with 5-HTP and folinic acid, the language development in the brain is associated with serotonin levels. So the more serotonin, we end up getting more language from our kids. So we've had kids go from nonverbal to verbal within a couple months just by supporting how the brain makes this serotonin chemical. And that's what these supplements do.
Is there any dosage attached with it? Like if there is a complete omission of language, how much dose is required?
That's a good question. So folinic acid, it's kind of a bell curve. Okay. And so if you give a little bit, you get a little improvement. If you give more, you get better improvement. But if you give too much, you start getting some side effects. And those side effects end up being behavioral, hyperactivity and anger, things we don't want. So what I tell my families is start with 1 milligram. So the folinic acid, 1 milligram, and just start increasing it by 1 milligram until you can kind of see your child's response. Which one gives better language without the hyperactivity? So we have some kids on 1 milligram. I've seen some of my patients have 50 milligrams. So it's a very broad amount of dosing because it's different for every child. It doesn't depend on their height, it doesn't depend on their weight, it doesn't depend on their age, just kind of depends on how their brain's functioning. So those are my dosing guidelines for folinic acid. For the 5-HTP, that normally comes in 100 milligram dosing. So again, you get this bell curve. So we start with 100 milligrams and kind of max out at around 400 or 500 milligrams. But again, I've had families just swear they start giving this stuff and the language just starts to improve, which is awesome.
Even to the severely autistic children?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, when you mention severely autistic kids, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's kind of two different categories in my mind. And it's of kids with autism, two different categories. And some of those subsets will respond really well and some won't. And that is part of our struggle with treating autism medically is that there is not one definitive this is going to work. Everybody responds differently. And so there is a lot of trial and error with different things, whether they be supplements or pharmaceuticals, to see what works for your kid. So it works for many, and the research shows that. But again, nothing works for everybody. So that's why we like to try different things.
Mm. So what would you advise our parents to use? What supplementation to use with behavioral support?
Good question. So when I talk to families about behaviors, again, it might be the hyperactivity, it might be the anger, it might be the violence. Um, a lot of families will end up talking to their pediatrician. They'll end up getting different psych meds, different ADD meds, things like Ritalin or methylphenidate or guanfacine. And sometimes those work and sometimes those backfire, but they never create any permanent change. They're just like a band-aid. If you take it and you're lucky enough that it does work, okay, it works, but then it wears off. So I'm trying to get to the core cause for my kids. There's always a cause and effect. These behaviors aren't just the child's choice. No child out there is going to scratch themselves till they bleed because they enjoy it. They're doing it for a reason. And if we can kind of get into that mindset and understand, okay, my child's upset or my child's hyper, why? And if I can understand and figure out that why, then I can make permanent change. So what I've found over the years is that most of our kids who have behavior issues, especially the violence or the anger or the self-harm or harming others, it has to do with pain. Okay. People who are in pain want it better. And so they want to express it to the people they love most, which is parents, which is mom, and which is dad. So if they're not verbal, they have no way to express that to you with words. So what do? They show you. They say, look, I'm in pain. I'm in pain. I'm going to hurt myself. I'm in pain. I'm going to hurt you until I get this message across that I need help. So what I tell my parents and my families is look for that pain. Now that pain might be teething. They might be pushing a tooth and that hurts. They may have an ear infection and just banging one side of their head. They may have a headache and just banging their head. A lot of our, autistic kids may headbang. So look for the pain. I would say the most common source of this pain is gut infections. So which I previously spoke to a little bit ago, but our kids have a very weak immune system within their gut, within their intestines, within their stomach, within their colon. The regular immune system is usually pretty good. You get a cold, you get an ear infection, you get a chest cold, and you get over it. But for some reason, that immune system in the gut is weakened specifically. So our kids are very predisposed to getting yeast infections, just like we all get yeast infections, whether it's athlete's foot and you get yeast in your toes or in your armpits or under your breasts, or women may get vaginal yeast infections. Babies get thrush in the mouth. These yeast infections are very common. And so our kids tend to get them in their intestines. And a lot of pediatricians won't diagnose it, won't look for it, won't test for it. So it just continues, and it gets worse. And it causes a lot of pain. And our kids with sensory issues, they feel that pain more than you or I. We may have a little upset belly, little stomach bug, but theirs is just long term. They feel the pain more, and that's where these behavior comes from. So I would say 90% of the time when we kill gut infections, and we can do that with supplements, then the behaviors improve. And the behaviors improve because we really targeted that cause of why medically the child is lashing out because they don't feel good.
That's a very big one. So, can you please tell us what testing is important to rule out autism or these problems in children?
Yeah, I would say there's one big kind of medical testing that I want everybody to know. And I say this because it's provided hundreds of my families with answers. And there's a lot of confusion out there kind of online, on the internet about this. So let me go back to something I said before. I was talking about two different subsets of autism. When I see my patients, I try to put them in one of these boxes. The first group is the stereotypical way that we see kids get autism, which is your child's born, and usually the first 12 months, that first year of life, things are pretty good. You got a little baby and they're interacting with you, and everything seems normal or typical. And then all of a sudden, around 12 to 18 months, they disappear. You're like, wait. The words are gone, the mama, the dada, the dog barking, the cat meowing, those words are gone, the eye contact's gone, and all of a sudden, as a parent, something's wrong. And trust that instinct. Nobody knows your child better than the parents, please. So if you feel something's wrong and off, that's a clue that you have this kind of regression where development is improving, and then all of a sudden, hey, wait, my child's not growing up as they should. And don't look at physical development. Usually physical development, motor skills, walking up and down stairs, throwing balls, kicking balls, those are all pretty typical for development. What we're looking at is kind of that brain development of language and interaction and mental processing. So that's the first subtype, and it's a very stereotypical story for many people around the world. The other subset are kids who just had a slow development from the beginning. Now, when you only have one child, it's kind of hard to figure that out. But when you have multiple kids, it's a lot easier because you can say, wow, these first 12 months for this kid were just nothing like the others, nothing. Or you just may have a maternal instinct or a paternal instinct and say, something's off here. This does not look like this isn't a 6-month-old. That's not where they are. So you either see this development and a regression, or you just kind of see slow development from the beginning. And the difference medically in what's creating those subsets is your genetics. It's your DNA. Okay. There's a lot of research about genetics out there with autism. And there's been some studies from Harvard and Yale that I quote a lot. And one of them says that a third of our kids with autism are born with genetics that aren't working. The DNA, especially the DNA of the brain, something's wrong, something's off, and that's creating the developmental delay. So that's 1/3 of our kids. The other group, which is the 2/3, are these regressive kids. Okay, and that's a different cause. It's not their genetics. It's toxins, it's infections, it's something in the brain. There's something got into the brain that's making it not develop. Now, this 1/3, 2/3 split is all kids with autism. But when we look at girls, it's evenly split. So there's a study from Yale that said 50% of girls have genetic causes, the other 50% don't. So that's a lot of our kids. I mean, you think of all the kids around the world with autism, it's a lot of kids that have some kind of DNA or some kind of genetic issue. So what I want you to do if you're listening to this and you've got a child with autism, think back to those first couple years of life. Did you see a child develop and regress, or did you just see everything was slow from the beginning? Something's different about this kid. Get genetic testing. Okay, so I would say that's where we need to start is, do I need genetic testing because my child had this slow development or maybe not? You want that genetic testing. And what I see on the internet, what I see on social media is confusion about which genetic test to get, because there are many. And the genetic tests you want to get are conventional genetic tests that you get from your doctor, which is called a microarray or a CMA, and an exome sequence or a WES, whole exome sequence. These are conventional genetic tests done around the world, that will show you, yes, your child has some genetic problem causing the autism and causing the brain development issues. Or not. Maybe your genetics are perfectly clear, but it'll kind of break you up into those two different subsets. And what I see online is there are genetic companies selling genetic testing that aren't diagnostic. So they're kind of what we call genomic tests. So you may want to do your DNA to figure out where your ancestry is from. You may want to do your DNA to find out things like MTHFR, which is a common gene out there. And that genomic testing is good, but it does not diagnose autism at all. So I just want people to understand there is this genomic testing that you can get online and buy it yourself. Then there's these more comprehensive, intense genetic tests that your doctor will order. So that's kind of the difference. But if you want real genetic testing, get that microarray CMA, get that exome WES. And the next question is, well, what do we do with it? Okay. Many people believe, even doctors, that you can't do anything with a genetic problem. Okay. They're like, well, you have a genetic problem and you always will. And I don't agree. Okay. Because we treat genetic issues that cause autism. And there was a study from Harvard that said genetic problems that cause autism are treatable 70% of the time. And that's huge. That's just absolutely huge. So the goal of any testing is to find a treatment. So that's my goal with genetic testing for my patients. And again, I've probably done upwards of like 800 to 1,000 genetic tests on our kids, let's say, or different kids. And boy, we find a lot of genetic stuff and we can treat it. And not all of it. Again, it's 70%. So there are some we can't treat. And you can never change your DNA. You'll always have, you got bad DNA, you'll always have it, but we can make your body better. And so I would say my favorite story, I was working with these twin boys with autism. I think they were about 5. And we did all these different type of supplements, different type of treatments and dietary changes. Nothing worked. Okay. And that's another clue. If you've been down this biomedical road and supplement road and nothing's worked for your child, get genetic testing. Trust me. Okay. Because those supplements and other kind of treatments often work for the regressive subgroup. But man, get that genetic testing. So these 5-year-olds, we did a bunch of stuff, nothing worked. We did their testing and they had a genetic condition, super rare, maybe 1 in a million kids in the world. But the good news is it had a proven treatment. And there was a doctor about 20 minutes from me who was one of the world leaders in this treatment. So they went to see him. And within a month, they went from nonverbal to fully verbal and they lost their autism diagnosis because maybe they didn't really have autism. They had a genetic condition that was diagnosed as autism. So until you do that testing, you don't know what's going on inside your child. So there's a lot of testing out there for autism stuff, organic acid tests and stool tests and food and heavy metals and toxins. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But I think genetic testing gets overlooked and it can be hugely important. Hugely.
As you're saying about genetic testing, it's reminding me of my own son having a slow development. And I knew since the beginning because my elder son was developing normal and he was not developing as he was supposed to. So we have gone through genetic testing and we came to know that there is a lot amount of oxalate crystals or some kind of genetic problem was there. Now he's doing really good with some supplements which we are providing him. And in a normal go, we would say that he has autism or he's dealing with autism, but after giving supplements, he's developing normally and he's doing good.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
so that supplement is magnesium and potassium and magnesium, which we are giving every day, twice daily.
Nice. Nice.
Up until still we are giving him, and he's doing really good. And I would like to ask you one more question here. Is there any external stimuli associated with regressive autism, which you just mentioned, apart from like genetic condition?
Yeah, well, first off, congratulations on helping your son. That's amazing. And two things from what you said. Number one, these are the stories of hope that we need to share with other families, especially families that just got their child an autism diagnosis and they're panicked and they don't know what to do, and their doctor says go to therapy, bye-bye. And you feel lost and you feel alone. So, I want first to congratulate you on doing that for your child. That's amazing. And because it's a story of hope, but also it's a story of a parent that never gives up. And that's what makes me sad. I see parents who just say, I'll put my kid in a home and I'm so sorry. But man, if you try, you never know what could happen until you try. So I love that. When it comes, to answer your question, we see these two groups. We have the genetic group and then we have this other regressive groups. What causes that? And what I've come to see, again, after working with thousands and thousands of kids, I've heard so many different stories. I've heard stories of the kind of the classic story, which is, hey, my kid was 12 months old, 18 months old. I brought them to see their doctor. They went, they got their shots, and then all of a sudden, everything changed. So there's obviously a big controversy out there where parents see this association. They say, I went to my doctor, I got shot, my kid got shots, and they're different. And they see this association. Obviously, you talk to doctors and you talk to, pharmaceutical companies. They're like, it's not us. We're not the problem. So that's a common story. The part of that story that many people forget is that you just don't go into your doctor's office and get your shots. You go in, you get your shots, and you take a bunch of paracetamol. So, paracetamol prescribed around the world for kids. It's also known as acetaminophen. Here in the US, it's brand name Tylenol. I believe there's also brand name Calpol. But this medication, which is prescribed by almost every pediatrician in the world, has so much scientific research over the past 5 to 10 years that it's the paracetamol causing the autism. And there's a great scientist here in the US at Duke University, really smart guy. I've got an interview with him on our social media. He does all this research about how toxic paracetamol and acetaminophen are, not just causing autism, but causing Alzheimer's and causing other brain disorders because it's so toxic. But we're giving it to our kids like candy. And I believe one study he published said that acetaminophen and paracetamol could be causing up to 70% of autism cases. And that's that two-thirds we're looking at. Okay. So when I do, again, that's the common story. So that's often the way we go treating it because, again, paracetamol and acetaminophen is toxic. It's toxic to the brain. Every hospital around the world has an antidote protocol for acetaminophen and paracetamol poisoning. So if you eat the whole bottle of paracetamol or acetaminophen and go to the hospital, they have the antidote. They have it ready. So my question, just as a parent, why am I giving my child a medicine that has an antidote? Why am I not looking for something different? So there's a lot of research down that road. And frankly, I think if we stop using paracetamol and acetaminophen with our kids, you're going to see the autism rates drop dramatically. Not go away, but drop dramatically. But I have I've heard other stories. I've heard of kids, start having seizures and then the autism comes. I've had parents tell me they had to bring their child into a hospital for a procedure. They go into the hospital and they came out with autism. They lost their language, they lost everything. So I think in general, what we're looking at are different toxic substances that can get into the brain of our kids and prevent development. So there's a lot of those out there. There's heavy metals like lead and aluminum that can cause these kind of problems as well, and mercury, but it's some kind of toxin in the brain. So a lot of our kids we put through detox programs because we got to get rid of that stuff.
Got it. Thank you so much for this comprehensive answer. And I got to ask before we finalize this amazing interview, what's Spectrum Awakening behind you?
So here's Spectrum Awakening. Spectrum Awakening is the company that I founded to help our kids with autism. So our website's spectrumawakening.com. And on that website, we've got four major things. Number one, we have education. So what I'm trying to do is teach parents all of these kind of things like this. And there's so much medically with autism and so much research. So we've got some free ebooks. We've got a course for a fee, and you're going to get like 50 different scientific research studies that confirm that this stuff works. We also have telemedicine appointments. So I have a telemedicine practice. I talk to families around the world. I've talked to people in North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia. So, Australia. So I want to help families around the world. We also have lab testing. So if you want that genetic testing, you want organic acid, oat testing, or stool testing, or heavy metal testing, we have that. We also have, again, all of the different supplements that I make for my patients, and you can get on our website. You don't have to be a patient. So we ship internationally, but we also have a big distributor in Europe, which is Mandy Mart. We have a smaller distributor in South Africa, and we're working on building other distributors. But that's Spectrum Awakening is my avenue to helping families, whether it be as the doctor, as the supplement provider, the lab tests, the education. There are ways to help your kid. And that's the most important thing you need to remember, that there's hope for your child to improve.
Okay.
This
Thank you.
is fantastic. And we have an audience of over 200,000 people watching this. So this is going to be amazing, the impact that you are creating with your interview. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Before
welcome.
we
I would
end,
love to help
Gerard,
as many people. Oh, I'm sorry, Philza, go ahead.
yes, before we end, we want you to talk about your free gift which you are giving to our audience.
Yes, the free gift we'll be giving you is our set of 3 free ebooks. And so the 3 ebooks that we currently have, which you guys will be getting for free, there's a beginner's guide to helping autism with supplements, which kind of talks about language, talks about little bowel issues. There's an advanced ebook, which gets into more medical issues. It gets into mitochondrial issues and sensory function and gut issues and hormones and all the different things that can affect our kids. And then lastly, we have an ebook about genetic testing. So as we kind of talked about genetic testing today in detail, the ebook will review with you all the different genetic tests that are out there. Because again, what I get frustrated with is I'll have families come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, we had genetic testing." I'll say, "That's great. What did you get?" And they said, "Well, we had this." I'm like, "Okay, that's good, but look at all these others." So we want to make sure you're getting the right analysis for your child. So those are the ebooks that you guys are going to get, and I hope they guide you guys to the next step of helping out your child.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
generosity, for your time. I'm so grateful to have you here in this platform talking about autism and creating an like awareness about autism, which is much necessary. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We're happy to help, and I love that I've kind of found this as my life's work. And I don't know how many kids we've worked with. Again, it's been thousands over the years, and the improvement that we've seen. And one last story. Um, one of my one of my oldest patients, again, twin boys. We have a fair number of twin boys with autism. Twin boys. I started seeing them when they were 5, and nonverbal. In a special school, and now 11 years later, they're 16. They've lost their autism diagnosis. They're fully verbal. They're getting their driver's license. They're winning championships in sports. So they run track and cross country. They're getting championships at their school for this. They're going to prom. They're being kids. They're being what they should be. So the point that I want everybody to understand is there's so much hope for your kids. And if you talk to somebody, whether it be a family member or a doctor or whoever, that says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, there's nothing you can do," ignore them and put them out of your life because you need to surround yourselves with people who are positive and optimistic and know that you can help your child in so many ways.
Absolutely. I believe that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Doctor, and really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your generosity for our parents' audience that get to be supported. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, ladies. I love
Bye
being
for
here.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.